coffee's going cold on the porch rail. Your knees are soaked through. You're pulling that same scraggly, yellow-flowered weed you pull every single Saturday. USDA researchers, university extension offices, and actual lab studies have all quietly reached the same verdict on 10 plants like it, and it isn't the verdict on the bag. Somewhere on this list, a burning field, a conquistador's order, and a death sentence for growing the wrong plant. Number 10. Yarrow. Little clusters of tiny white or yellow flowers, feathery fern-like leaves. The plant that shows up in gravel patches and compacted edges where nothing else wants to live. Most people rip it out because it spreads. Here's what they're ripping out. Its scientific name is Achillea millefolium. Achillea, as in Achilles. According to Homer's Iliad, Achilles used this plant's leaves to stop his soldiers bleeding during the Trojan War. 3,000 years old, and the plant still bears his name. So why does your extension office call it a weed? It spreads aggressively by rhizome, and it doesn't look tidy in a manicured bed. That's it. That's the whole complaint. Here's the mechanism they're ignoring. Yarrow is a dynamic accumulator. Its roots go deeper than most companion plants, pulling phosphorus, potassium, copper, and calcium up from the subsoil and storing it in the leaves. Chop it, drop the cuttings as mulch, and you're feeding minerals to your topsoil that nothing else could reach. Above ground, those flat flower clusters are landing pads for ladybugs, lacewings, and parasitic wasps, the insects that eat aphids and tomato hornworms before they wreck your plants. Researchers have called it an unpaid security guard. Full sun, poor soil, don't baby it. Achilles used this plant to keep soldiers alive on a battlefield. The only battlefield it's fighting now is your driveway edge, and you're the one holding the spray bottle. Number 9. Broadleaf plantain. Not the banana's cousin. This is the low, flat rosette of ribbed leaves growing in the most walked-on path in your yard. The spot by the mailbox. The shortcut across the lawn. And that's no coincidence. When European colonists spread across North America, this plant followed them so closely that Native Americans named it white man's foot. It doesn't wait for good soil. It moves in wherever the ground's been beaten down, which is exactly why it's a bioindicator. Plantain thrives in compacted, low-oxygen soil. Extension researchers use it to flag exactly that condition, for free, before you spend money finding out the hard way. But here's the part that should surprise you. It doesn't just tolerate abused soil, it actively cleans it. Plantago major is classified as a serious bioaccumulator for heavy metals, especially lead. In polluted water trials, its roots pulled in as much as 9,284 milligrams of lead per kilogram in 25 days, locking almost all of it in the roots and away from the leaves. Researchers use that leaf-metal correlation to map contaminated urban soil without expensive lab testing. It's also been used for generations as a poultice for stings and wounds, and modern research confirms real antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory activity in the leaf. Leave a patch in your worn zones. It's telling you which parts of your soil need aerating. Number 8. Shepherd's purse. Small white flowers, flat little heart-shaped seed pods that genuinely look like tiny leather purses. European shepherds carried pouches shaped just like them, and the name stuck. It shows up fast in disturbed soil right after you till a bed. In Japan, it's one of the 7 herbs of spring, eaten in a ceremonial rice porridge every January 7th. But here's the strangest mechanism on this list. Drop shepherd's purse seeds in water, and they swell up, releasing a sticky mucilage that attracts mosquito larvae. The larvae get stuck to the seed, and the seed releases a toxin that kills them on contact. 1 kilogram of seed has been shown to destroy up to 10 million mosquito larvae. That's a self-replicating, zero-chemical mosquito control system sitting in your flower bed, and researchers are studying it for suppressing disease vectors in standing water. Let some go to seed near a rain barrel or a low spot that pools. You've just built a mosquito trap for free. Number 7. Common chickweed. Small, sprawling, tiny white star-shaped flowers forming a dense mat low to the ground, and here's the detail that matters. Check your beds in late February, ground still cold, tomatoes weeks away, and chickweed's already there, already green, already growing. That timing is the entire point of this plant. It's on Japan's list of the 7 herbs of spring, too, eaten in that same New Year's porridge as shepherd's purse. In Western agriculture, it's just a cold-tolerant nuisance that colonizes fields before cash crops get established. It's actually developed herbicide resistance in some grain-growing regions, a sign of how determined it is to keep showing up. Here's why it earns its spot. Chickweed forms a dense living carpet across bare ground all winter, absorbing the impact of winter rainfall and cutting erosion and nutrient runoff, a spontaneous, self-planting cover crop for the months your beds would otherwise just sit exposed. And it doesn't compete with what you actually want. By the time your tomatoes need that ground in late spring, chickweed's already dying back on its own. One plant produces around 800 seeds, viable in soil for up to 10 years. So once it's in your garden, it's part of your garden, permanently, for free. It's also carrying real vitamin C, calcium, magnesium, and iron. Mild, grassy, good raw in a salad, good wilted into soup. Number 6. Forage chicory. Tall, wiry stems, sky blue flowers that only open in morning sun. Most farmers see it as a persistent, deep-rooted weed muscling into pasture. Ancient Egyptians cultivated it as a liver tonic. Roasted chicory root became a coffee substitute across Europe, and in New Orleans, during naval blockades when actual coffee was scarce, that coffee and chicory blend everyone still drinks started as a workaround, not a flavor trend. Here's why it earns the 6th spot, and it's active research, not history. The biggest problem in raising sheep and goats on pasture is Haemonchus contortus, the barber pole worm, a blood-sucking gut parasite that's developed resistance to basically every synthetic dewormer available. Chicory produces sesquiterpene lactones, compounds like lactucin and 8-deoxylactucin, and USDA-ARS parasitology trials have shown these compounds directly stop the parasite's eggs from hatching. Certain chicory cultivars, tested against each other in those same trials, show measurably stronger anti-parasitic effects than others. Integrate high-performance forage chicory into rotational grazing, and you cut synthetic dewormer use on a farm, from a plant currently getting mowed down as a roadside weed. Young leaves are edible too, mildly bitter, endive-like. And numbers 5 through 2 get stranger from here. A plant running 2 modes of photosynthesis that were supposedly biochemically impossible to combine, and a wartime uniform made out of something growing in your ditch right now. If you want USDA research instead of Pinterest advice, that's this whole channel. Hit subscribe now, because the next 4 get genuinely strange. Number 5. Common purslane. Low, sprawling, thick reddish stems, small paddle-shaped leaves. The only true succulent on this list. Most people find it in a garden bed, assume some ornamental snuck in, and toss it in the compost. That reaction would have confused most of human history. Purslane's been cultivated for at least 2,000 years. Pliny the Elder carried it as protection against evil spirits. Ancient Greek herbalists treated inflammation with it, and in traditional Chinese medicine it's still known as the vegetable for long life. Here's the mechanism, and it's genuinely rare. This plant runs 2 completely different survival modes and switches between them depending on the weather, almost like swapping engines mid-drive. When water's plentiful, it runs a mode built for speed. Under drought or salt stress, it switches to a second mode that only opens its pores at night to conserve water. Scientists considered these 2 modes, C4 and CAM photosynthesis, biochemically incompatible for a long time. Purslane runs both, in a single leaf, on command. That adaptability is why it thrives in sidewalk cracks and salty, compacted soil nothing else can survive. In trials on highly saline soil, it pulled up to 210 kilograms of chloride and 65 kilograms of sodium per hectare out of the ground in a single season, desalinating soil enough for salt-sensitive crops like tomatoes to grow better nearby. Nutritionally, it might be the best item on this whole list. A 100-gram serving carries around 400 milligrams of omega-3s, the highest concentration in any leafy green, plus 44% of your daily vitamin A and 35% of your vitamin C. people pay real money for fish oil capsules to hit those numbers. This grows for free out of a crack in your sidewalk. Number 4. Stinging nettle. You know this one by feel before you know it by name. Fine hairs on the stem, each one a pressurized syringe of irritant. Most gardeners eliminate it on sight. During both world wars, an entire country treated it as critical infrastructure. When Allied blockades cut off Germany's cotton access, the Central Powers turned to wild nettle as a substitute textile fiber. By the start of World War II, German military uniforms were made of up to 85% nettle fiber. The British, meanwhile, gathered hundreds of tons of it annually, not for fabric, but to extract chlorophyll for dyeing camouflage netting green. Same weed, two countries, two different wartime supply chains. Here's why it worked mechanically. Treated nettle fiber tests stronger, strand for strand, than the glass fiber used in fiberglass insulation. Roughly 4,451 megapascals of tensile strength against about 3,400 for glass fiber. It has a hollow core running through it that can be manipulated during spinning. Spun loosely, it traps air for winter insulation. Spun tightly, it produces a denser summer fabric. Same fiber, tuned for two different climates. It's also good food. The sting disappears entirely with heat, and gram for gram, the leaves carry roughly 4 times the iron of actual spinach. Number 3. White clover. A WWII herbicide that couldn't tell clover from a dandelion took it out along with everything else on your lawn. And the company that made it spent real marketing money convincing homeowners a real lawn didn't have clover in it. That's the only reason you look at it and think it doesn't belong there. It's inherited advertising, not botany. Here's what that marketing campaign actually cost you. White clover runs its own private chemical factory underground. Its roots form nodules that house rhizobium bacteria, carrying an enzyme called nitrogenase that breaks apart atmospheric nitrogen and converts it into a form plants can use. A stand of white clover fixes somewhere between 80 and 220 pounds of nitrogen per acre every year, for free, on-site, zero production cost, versus synthetic fertilizer that needs the energy-intensive Haber-Bosch process just to manufacture. It also forms a living mulch that holds soil moisture and suppresses weeds, and its flowers are one of the best nectar sources honeybees get all season. Synthetic fertilizer offers pollinators nothing. University extension programs, including research out of the University of Maryland, are now actively validating low-growing microclover varieties as legitimate lawn components, quietly walking back 70 years of marketing. Number 2. Dandelion. Remember that Saturday morning, gloves on, knees soaked, pulling that same scraggly yellow-flowered weed. This is it. This is the plant. By the early 1940s, Japan's military had cut off Allied access to over 90% of the world's natural rubber supply. Rubber wasn't a luxury. It was tires, gaskets, hoses, the physical infrastructure of a war effort. So the U.S. needed a domestic alternative, fast. The answer was a dandelion relative called Taraxacum coxsagis, the Russian dandelion. Under the Emergency Rubber Project, the USDA partnered with the University of Vermont and recruited citizen volunteers to weed and transplant entire fields of it. A real, government-run agricultural program built around a plant you'd spray without a second thought. The science is still active. This dandelion's roots produce high molecular weight natural rubber inside specialized cells using an enzyme called rubber transferase, and current USDA-ARS trials show planting roughly 1.23 million plants per hectare can yield up to 60 kilograms of rubber per hectare in a single 4-month season. Your everyday lawn dandelion isn't the rubber variety, but it's still carrying its own case. 558% of your daily vitamin K in a 100-gram serving. More beta-carotene than a carrot. A taproot that goes down 18 inches through compacted soil nothing else can crack. Realistically, you cannot kill it without chemicals, which, now that you know what's coming, might explain exactly why we've spent so much effort trying. Because the plant on this list with the highest stakes of all isn't behind you, it's next. Number 1. Amaranth. specifically the wild form most of us know as redroot pigweed, waist-high, reddish stem, showing up uninvited in vegetable beds and construction sites. Almost nobody looks at this plant and sees anything but a nuisance. 500 years ago, an entire empire looked at it and saw survival. Before European contact, amaranth, the Aztecs called it huahuitl, was a core staple crop of the Aztec Empire, grown alongside maize and beans. Historical tribute records show Montezuma received over 20,000 tons of it annually. It also carried deep religious weight. Ground amaranth seed was mixed with honey and, in specific ceremonies, sacrificial blood, then formed into statues representing the sun god Huitzilopochtli, statues later broken apart and distributed for ritual consumption. When Hernán Cortés arrived, he interpreted this as a demonic mockery of the Catholic Eucharist. The response wasn't disapproval. It was a ban, with penalties including death or amputation for anyone who kept growing it. Fields were burned. Stored seed was destroyed. A deliberate, targeted effort to dismantle an entire agricultural and religious system by eliminating the plant at its center. What's almost unbelievable is that it survived anyway. Its wild relative, redroot pigweed, turned out to be one of the most resilient species in North American agriculture. A single plant can produce up to 300,000 seeds, viable in soil for over 40 years, and a close relative, Palmer amaranth, can grow up to 3 inches in a single day. It's since developed genetic resistance to multiple major herbicide classes, including glyphosate. History already tried to erase this plant with far more brutal tools than a spray bottle. It's still here. Nutritionally, it was worth defending, more bioavailable protein, and a fuller amino acid profile than soybeans or milk, leaves rich in iron and vitamin C. Researchers are now studying its genetics for breeding drought-tolerant food crops, a plant an empire built part of its economy around, a plant its enemies tried to erase by force, currently growing, unbothered, in raised beds across America, getting pulled and thrown in yard waste without a second thought. Let's run it back, start to finish, because if you made it this far, you now know something about your own yard that almost nobody else does. 10. Yarrow, Achilles' battlefield medicine, still pumping minerals to your topsoil. 9. Broadleaf plantain, white man's foot, pulling lead out of poisoned soil. 8. Shepherd's purse, a seed that hunts and kills mosquito larvae, no chemicals involved. 7. Common chickweed, feeding you in the dead of winter when nothing else will. 6. Forage chicory, an ancient Egyptian tonic now being studied by USDA researchers to fight livestock parasites. 5. Common purslane, running photosynthesis that was supposedly impossible, packing more omega-3s than anything else growing. 4. Stinging nettle, the plant that literally clothed a wartime army. 3. White clover, the free fertilizer factory that got marketed out of your lawn on purpose. 2. Dandelion, the plant the U.S. government secretly farmed for rubber. 1. Amaranth, a staple valuable enough that an empire built tribute around it, and dangerous enough to its enemies that a conquistador tried to erase it with the death penalty. 10. Weeds. Everyone backed by USDA data, university extension research, or documented history, not just something I read once and decided to believe. Almost nothing on this list was ever actually a weed. It was a crop, a medicine, a material, a food source, until something else needed you to stop seeing it that way. A chemical company, a colonial power, a marketing budget. The plant never changed. The story around it did. If this is useful to you, actually growing more of your own food, actually questioning what you've been told to spray, hit subscribe. This channel only works if enough of us start looking at our own yards differently. And I want to know something specific. Out of these 10, which one is already growing in your yard right now? And did you know it before this video? Drop it in the comments. I read every one, and I'm genuinely curious which of these is hiding in plain sight for most people. Because here's the thing. Coffee's cold now, knees are still soaked through, and you're standing over that same scraggly, yellow-flowered weed you've pulled every Saturday since April. Next time, maybe you don't spray it. Maybe you just look at it a little longer first.